This is Conservative to America. I am your host, Cole Holcomb, giving you news commentary from the best perspective, the conservative perspective. Today, we're going to be covering things from Trump eliminating the personal income tax to the Tennessee special election. Results are in from Tennessee. There is good news and there is bad news for the Republican Party. The good news is that the Republican candidate won. Matt Van Epps was able to pull off a victory on Tuesday night. The bad news is Republicans underperformed. To truly understand this underperformance on Tuesday, we need to unravel what happened. The Republican candidate, Matt Van Epps, won on Tuesday night by a margin of 8.9 percentage points. This is an improvement for Democrats by 10.1 points in District 7 since 2024. Why is that number important, you may ask? Well, looking back at the 2017 and 2018 election cycle, Democrats improved across the board by an average of 10.6 points nationally before gaining 41 House seats in the 2018 election. So let's look at this race down here of what happened. There was a great amount of voters here, great turnout in Davidson County. Davidson County, that is where Nashville is. Nashville, Tennessee, that's where that is. And it's interesting because, of course, Nashville is going to vote liberal. We're not surprised about that. But you would have thought maybe Republicans would have done better because, he's running against the candidate that said, I hate Nashville. I think that this race said a lot more about the Republican Party than what it did about either candidate. The Republican Party ran an amazing candidate, wonderful across the board, a really good candidate. Afton Ben, she's a terrible candidate, but yet she's probably one of the worst candidates that's ever ran in this district against a Republican, but yet she was able to close that margin. And why? Why? Well, because voters see failure from the Republican Party. They see promises made, promises not kept. That's what they see. That may not be what's true, but that's what they look at whenever they go in the grocery store. That's what they see. So that's the reason why Afton Ben was able to deliver not a victory, but deliver, man, a bunch of votes. That was the reason why Matt Van Epps was not able to trounce Afton Ben in this special election. Man. But looking at Tuesday night's results, it looks like there very well might be a bad moon on the rise for the Republican Party come 2026. However, we need to look at these points and what happened. With that 10.6 percentage points nationally, before gaining the 41 House, then they gained 41 House seats in the 2018 election. We need to dive deeper into that on how all that happened. It wasn't before, this is for the bright side for Republicans, it wasn't before December 22nd, 2017. It was not before then that the Trump tax cuts were passed. Luckily for Republicans and the conservative movement, the big, beautiful bill, the Trump tax cuts of Trump's second term, was passed all the way back in early July, so weekend of the 4th, that it was passed and signed into law. In the first Trump administration, people did not begin to feel the effects of the tax cuts before the 2018 midterms. They began to feel them around late 2018 and early 2019. That was whenever Trump's good, amazing economy was. 2019 was a golden year for Trump's first term. Then COVID rolled around. If it wouldn't have been for COVID, President Trump would have never lost, and it would have even been close in the 2020 presidential election. Now that's a whole nother topic on the 2020 presidential election, but it tells you really what President Trump can do. It tells you really what these tax cuts do and how they affect our economy. Well, President Biden, he implemented terrible economic decisions whenever he was president of this country, and we're still dealing with those. But as these Trump executive orders and these bills that Republicans are passing in Congress, as they begin to take effect, I truly believe Republicans will see not Republicans, the voters will see the effects of what the Republicans have passed and what they have put forward. And I believe that we very well might see that next year before the midterms if the timeline reflects what it was. If it goes by the same timeline, hopefully Americans, as I said, they will begin to feel the Trump tax cuts in, you know, by probably late July, maybe early August. At the latest, I would hope October, but at least, in reality, at the latest, I would hope for late August. Um, but at least I expect for the Republican Party that people will begin to feel the Trump tax cuts and the big beautiful bill before the 2026 midterms. It's good news for Republicans. I think that if it's any later than August, Republicans probably won't win control of Congress. They probably will not hold on to Congress. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong if it is later than August. But I see it more kind of like Republicans. They just won't lose terribly. Maybe they'll lose a few seats, but it's not going to be like they lose 41 like they did last time. But we'll have to continue to follow that and watch and see if it goes by the same timeline it did last time, or maybe it'll be 2 years and maybe Democrats will win in a landslide in this in the midterms. And if that happens, oh Lord help us, because that is going to be a bad time. It'll be like everything the Republican Party has done will be brought to a halt. The idea that President Trump has 4 years, no, he has 2 years to get the big things passed, and then another 2 years if these big things that were passed can be implemented and the voters can fill them before the midterms roll around. In the event of all of this happening in the way that I hope it does, I see Republicans holding Congress in the midterms. What happened on Tuesday night? Yes, it was bad news. I'm not going to admit that it wasn't. I'm not going to admit that this was not an embarrassment for Republicans. It was. Anyone who says this wasn't an embarrassment or tries to make an excuse, there is no excuse for what happened on Tuesday for Republicans. It was simply, other than maybe you could make the argument, we're still living in the Biden era. We're still living in Biden era economics. We're still dealing with parts of Bidenomics that are just kind of making their way out of this country. And voters are blaming Republicans right now. Well, you can't really fix that. But anyways, this was an embarrassment for Republicans, no matter how you put it. This was an embarrassment. I truly do believe that. But I believe that it's going to turn around, and I hope it turns around. I see future success ahead for the Republican Party, but most of all for the American people. If that success can arrive by next summer, I see Republicans holding Congress, and I see Republican victories come 26 and even more in 2028. Now, let's go on as what I said to the income tax. The income tax, Donald Trump was talking about. President Trump is touting doing away with the personal income tax and letting the revenue from tariffs take its place. Man, I have loved this idea for years. I have touted this idea. I have pushed for it. I have wanted it for so long. I support this 100%. I think this is a wonderful idea. It's the way things used to be in this country before, I believe it was 1910 whenever the income tax was created. But if this were to happen before the 2026 midterms, I believe it would seal the deal for a Republican victory in 26 and 28. I believe that's unlikely, but if it were to happen, it would seal the deal for Republicans to hold the White House for years to come and to hold Congress for years to come. We need to do away with the income tax. We're at that moment. We have the tariffs. I believe that we can do it. So I push for it so bad. I hope that this really happens. I support tariffs whenever they pay back those who have taken advantage of the United States and when they benefit the American people and their livelihoods. I believe this idea is much better than a tariff rebate. In the tariff rebate, inflation goes through the roof, which in turn hurts Americans more. When tax reform happens, it benefits the economy and the American people. Our adversaries and even those we have viewed as friends have taken advantage of the American people for too long. The income tax has taken advantage of the working man for too long. The income tax has taken advantage of the working man for too long. May God bless President Trump and give him the wisdom in order to bring about this wonderful economic change that will give economic advancement for this country, and most of all, it will help the American man. What Republicans must remember in all of this, they have to remember this. It's that the Democrat Party has a high disapproval rating by the American people. It's higher than President Donald Trump's disapproval rating. It's higher than the Republican Party's disapproval rating. Republicans, they have already delivered on the border. And you remember that. They've already delivered on the border. They've already delivered on peace and on national security. All they have left to deliver on is the economy. Once they deliver on the economy, if they can get rid of the income tax, especially, then the golden age will have officially begun. I close and I ask these questions. Will Democrat improvement in Tennessee's 7th congressional district transfer over to the 2026 election? Will Americans see the effects of the big, beautiful bill before midterms? Will the Trump administration find a way to do away with the income tax? Only time will tell, but I will continue to bring you news commentary from the best perspective, the conservative perspective.